Hey, what is up, Internet? Kyle here, Slapshot Toys. It is a couple days after Christmas, which means New Year's is right around the corner, which means 2017 is almost done, which is crazy to think about. But I wanted to go ahead and kind of take a look at this past year in the world of comics and do my top 10 comics of 2017. Now, 2017 was an unbelievable, and I mean that as big as I can, an unbelievable year for comics. It was just creators left and right firing on all cylinders. This was an extremely hard choice, and I think I made some pretty good ones. These are definitely my favorite books. But what this list is actually going to be is not only books that started in 2017 or were a mini-series contained in 2017, but books that may have started a couple years prior, but continued through 2017, and I feel that those arcs that we got this year just made the series that much better and just furthered on the story. So it's kind of a mix mash of new comics and just ongoings that just went through 2017. So with that little intro, let's go ahead and get into it with a couple honorable mentions. First honorable mention I want to take a look at is Rock Candy Mountain. Now this is an Image comic by Kyle Starks. Basically follows the story of a hobo named Jackson who is trying to find the fabled Rock Candy Mountain and all sorts of colorful characters that he meets along the rails, and even chased by the literal devil throughout most of the book. This book is fantastic, ton of great humor. The art, even though it's kind of simplistic, which is Kyle Stark's style, it just works so well for this book. The pacing is phenomenal. He just leaves all these little kind of hints of what's to come. And this is just one amazing book. Unfortunately, I believe it's only going to last 8 issues. I think they're on 6 right now. But this is definitely a book if you're just looking for something really fun to read, something just really out there and kind of in a period that we don't really visit a whole lot, Rock Candy Mountain is definitely for you. Our second honorable mention goes to Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nigan, I believe how you pronounce his last name, their book Descender. Now this is a sci-fi epic all about the world where robots are created and help us, and then robots turn around and destroy humanity, so humanity destroys robots. And caught in the middle of all this is a little companion droid named Tim-21, and just the craziness that surrounds everything with him. So this is just a fantastic sci-fi book. It's one of my favorite books overall. The reason I'm putting it in the honorable mention is that the arc that we had in 2017, or at least the first one, focused a lot on backstory for characters, which filled in a lot of gaps, which was really cool. It just didn't really do a whole lot to push the story forward. But I did want to give this book a shout out because it's absolutely amazing. The artwork is unbelievable, and they actually just came out with this gorgeous, I mean absolutely gorgeous hardcover edition that actually has the first 3 volumes all in it. So I just wanted to give this book a little shout out. It's absolutely amazing. Any other year it's going to be definitely my top 10, probably my top 5. Just this year was a little bit off in my opinion. But I wanted to give this book a shout out. So if you're into sci-fi, make sure you pick up Descender. Alright, so that brings us to our actual top 10. And coming in at number 10 from DC Comics and Scott Snyder and a host of different artists, we have All-Star Batman. Now, I'll be honest, when All-Star Batman first started, I was not prepared for where Scott Snyder was taking Batman, and I actually did not care for the book. I thought the first couple issues were phenomenal, and then I really fell off, and especially when he started doing the Ends of the World story arc where he was having Batman go to Alaska and the desert and all these things, I was just like, and the way he was kind of presenting some of the villains, I was like, I was not prepared for it, and so I didn't really care for it. But when I went back and reread those issues, I really understood what Scott Snyder was trying to do, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. He was taking Batman villains that we know and love and have read for years, and I mean just putting this like horrific new twist on them and giving them just this like sense, especially Mr. Freeze. That was the issue that really stood out for me. Just, I mean, how terrifying Mr. Freeze really was. And just the attempts and the boundaries that Scott Snyder pushed with Batman in this book, I thought was just brilliant. And that is why it is number 10 in my countdown. Fortunately, DC did end this book in 2017, I believe with issue 15, but they're supposedly bringing it back for a new premium format, which most people are speculating is going to be like a trade-only type thing. But All-Star Batman, if you're a little bit kind of tired of just the same old Batman over and over again, highly, highly, highly recommend All-Star Batman, and that's why it is number 10. Coming in at number 9 from Image Comics, Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, Kill or Be Killed. Now this book is actually kind of a twist take on the Punisher vigilante type character. We have our main character Dylan, who's actually kind of possessed or cursed, if you will, by a demon, and what he has to do is kill one bad person a month, otherwise he, Dylan, will die himself. And so what we get here is kind of this book of going through kind of the makings of a killer, of a kid that doesn't really want to be in the situation and starts becoming comfortable with it. And this is just a really, really unique take on kind of the Punisher type character, the steps that someone would go through as they're transitioning their mind to be able to take someone else's life, even though it's a bad person, for survival of their own. This is just a phenomenal crime book. If you're a fan of the Punisher, if you're a fan of just really, really, really good crime drama, this is a wonderful book. The supernatural elements are definitely there, but the book focuses more on kind of Dylan's mental state as he starts to break down, as he becomes more comfortable and more confident in his killing. This is just a wonderful book. I can't recommend it enough. That is why it's at number 9. Coming in at number 8, we have from Image Comics once again, and Jeff Lemire, and you're going to see his name a lot in this list. We have Royal City. Now, Jeff actually writes and draws this book, and what we have here is a story about an extremely, extremely dysfunctional family, all coming back to the town that they grew up in because their father has had a stroke. And what we get is a family that has a ton of demons, all having to face all the seriousness of what's going on with their family, with themselves. And this is just a beautifully encapsulated character study. There's not really any action. This is not your typical comic. This is something that definitely looks at family dynamics, family relationships, and it does such a wonderful job at it. I mean, the book is heartbreaking. It's honestly depressing, but it's beautifully written. I cannot wait to see where this goes. He's put so much into it. This is a wonderful book if you want something away from the fighty, punchy superhero stuff. This is just a fantastic read, and I can't recommend it enough. That is why it's at number 8. Coming in at number 7 from Vertigo Comics, Rob Williams, Unfollow. And now, so Unfollow actually follows that's kind of funny. He actually follows a tech genius that invents a social media platform, much like Twitter. He is dying, and he's worth billions of dollars, so he has actually decided that he's going to give all his money, split it evenly among 144 of his social media platform users, and the only catch is if any of them die, their share then gets redistributed evenly among the remaining members. Kind of a cool little twist, right? And so what this book is absolutely brilliant. It really pushes a lot of kind of thinking as far as how addicted to social media we are, how addicted to our phones we are, just kind of how we look to these false leaders and just like these idealists for answers, and we just follow them blindly, not really knowing who they are, what they are. This is just an extremely engrossing read. The concept alone of the paranoia and just kind of how people react with getting this type of money and then having like this kind of price put on their head, and just how people change all throughout it is just wonderfully done. Art's fantastic. It's unfortunately ended in 2017, so it's not anything ongoing, but it ends perfectly. And this is one book that I still think about. It definitely has stuck with me ever since I read that last page. Probably here really soon I'm going to go ahead and reread the whole series again. It was that dang good. So if you are kind of into like the paranoia, conspiracy theory, thriller type books, Unfollow. It's fantastic. Coming in at number 6, once again, Jeff Lemire, but this time it's Dark Horse. This is Black Hammer. Now, this story actually follows a group of superheroes, much like the Avengers, and they're battling one of their greatest foes, and then all of a sudden, this explosion happens, and they wake up in a rural town in the middle of nowhere. No idea how they got there, no idea where they are, and they are trapped there, working on a family farm. And so the story actually takes place, I think, 10 years after they were transported, and just how these superheroes that are stuck in this rural town are just coping, and not only coping kind of with living in the town, but also with each other. This is just another fantastic kind of character study as we kind of look at the family dynamic of just kind of how people live and interact with one another. But then you have the superhero twist of all these characters are superhuman, and just how are they living without being able to use their powers, with having to blend into this little rural town. It's just a fantastic book. Again, Jeff Lemire, unbelievable writer, and this is no exception. So if you kind of want the family drama, not so much as a character study as the Royal City that I did a couple numbers ago, but this is definitely very similar, just with a superhero twist. All the characters' backstories are fantastic. Their interactions with the town, wonderful. This is one book that I read in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. So if you're looking for something superhero-ish with a non-superhero-ish kind of vibe, Black Hammer is definitely for you. Coming in at number 5 from Image Comics, we have Rick Remender's 7 to Eternity. Now this book centers around a group of magic wielders that have been tasked with basically taking down this evil king named the Mud King. But the catch is, the Mud King's power is he actually can kind of hook himself into anyone who's willing to hear an offer. So they kind of sell their souls to him. And unfortunately, if they kill him without releasing these souls from his power, they will kill every person that has ever listened to an offer from this Mud King and has allowed him to possess their soul. So they are actually kind of trying to take the Mud King to this place where they can actually release all these souls. And so what you get is kind of a road trip type story in some aspects. You have this group of very flawed characters who are all trying to redeem something by doing this good deed of releasing all these souls from the Mud King and getting the Mud King out of power. And you just have this extremely interesting dynamic of this very deceitful Mud King that's always trying to kind of pull these flawed characters, these flawed heroes in all sorts of directions. You have these groups that are trying to free the Mud King because he has their soul, so they're kind of possessed to do his will. It's just a fantastic fantasy book. The world building is second to none, which is my biggest thing when it comes to fantasy. The world has to be built wonderfully. You have to have reasons for these characters to have the powers they do, to have the motivation they do, and this is just an amazing book. The character design, the art is unbelievably cool. Rick Remender is my favorite writer, so of course I'm going to love it, but his take on kind of fantasy and building a fantasy world is absolutely unbelievable. So 7 to Eternity, I can't recommend this book enough. If you're looking for something more in the fantasy realm, definitely give this a shot. That's why it's number 5. Coming in at number 4 from Image Comics, from Jeff Lemire again and Scott Snyder. Scott Snyder writes, Jeff Lemire does the art. We have AD After Death. And this book kind of centers around the idea of finding a cure for death and what would happen if we just continue to live our lives for hundreds of years. And it's kind of hard to describe other than that. It's just kind of one of those books you have to read for yourself to really kind of understand what it's about. But it's unbelievable. Now, I will say this book is kind of different. It's half comic, half traditional novel. So there is a ton of reading for this book. So it definitely pushes a lot of boundaries. It's not going to be for everybody. But just some of the ideas that this book presents as far as kind of looking at how we live our lives, how we let anxiety, fear, the fear of death. Those are some major points in this book. And it almost seemed kind of therapeutic for Scott Snyder. It almost seemed like this is a very personal book, and he worked through a lot of kind of things writing it. This book connected with me in an unbelievable level because of that, and it's one of those things that if you're willing to put in the time, I think you'll get a ton out of this book. Comic portions are gorgeously drawn by Jeff Lemire. His art works so well for this type of book, and yeah, the writing is unbelievable. I did a huge I think a 10-15 minute review on it. So you can find that video actually in my past comic reviews. This book meant that much to me that I wanted to take the time and do a much more in-depth review on it. So if you guys want to check that out, it is out there. But After Death is a just beautifully written book, all about finding the cure for death and kind of how we would deal with something like that. So yeah, After Death, amazing book. That's why it's number 4. Coming in at number 3 from Image Comics, Rick Remender, once again, my favorite writer, Deadly Class. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is my favorite book of all time. This is my favorite comic. Deadly Class is unbelievably good. And the arcs that we got this year only further that. This year, what this story actually follows around is a high school for assassins. So all the world's deadliest, the cartels kids, the Russian mob, the KGB, the like any crime organization you can think of sends their kids here to become assassins. So what you get is this extremely action-packed book of all these extremely deadly kids, but you also get all this character drama, almost kind of like a high school drama, if you will. So you see the way the teens interact with one another, but not only is it like kind of the clique type drama, you get a ton of drama from the kids trying to one-up each other because they are these extremely hard, extremely deadly kids. And the arcs that we got this year were unbelievable. We get introduced to a whole new freshman class. All the characters are fantastic. A lot of the twists and turns from previous arcs come to fruition in these two, and the cliffhangers are unreal. I cannot wait to see where this book goes. I believe, unfortunately, the last arc will be coming in 2018, which really, really sucks. I hope Remender isn't done with it, but it kind of sounds like it may be the last arc starting in March, which really, yeah, really, really sucks. But we are getting a TV show on Sci-Fi, which I'm super excited about because Rick Remender actually tweeted out that he loved the pilot, and kind of the interviews and stuff I've seen with him and kind of knowing how he talks, I don't think he would just say something to say it. I think he must really like it. So I'm super excited for the TV show. But Deadly Class, this is my favorite comic of all time. I can reread it and reread it and reread it. It never gets old. It's simply that good. And if it wasn't for the next two, this would have definitely been number 1 any other year. But unfortunately, the next one, but the next two were even better. But Deadly Class, number 3. If you haven't read it, go get it. All right, coming in at number 2 from Image Comics, we have Shirtless Bear Fighter. And you're probably sitting there, what the heck is this guy talking about? This is his number 2 book. It's called Shirtless Bear Fighter. Heck yeah, it is. And it is freaking awesome. So the story actually follows a guy named Shirtless, and he's a bear fighter. He was raised by bears, and he was betrayed by bears. So he actually wanders the forest and fights bears and protects, normal hikers and things like that from bears. Simple enough. Until bears start attacking cities and he has to go save the day, and then there's this whole conspiracy theory, and yeah, it's that crazy. But this is the funnest book I have read in I don't know how long. This book honestly reminded me how fun comics can and should be. This comic does not take itself seriously. It knows exactly what it is, and it hits every note perfectly. I don't know how many times I laughed out loud at this book. I've read this 3 times now, and I love it even more every time I do. It's delightful. Like, it really is just a delightful, fun comic. Like I said, the jokes are perfect. The pacing is perfect. It's just a fun comic that I think in a world of dark, dreary, just a lot of stress, anxiety, and things like that going on right now, this just really kind of makes you take a step back, and it's just fun and is enjoyable and lets you escape for just a while. And I forgot that comics can do that until this book. This is something I highly recommend if you're just looking for fun, if you're just looking for zany, if you're just looking for an escape. Shirtless Bear Fighter. I know it sounds dumb. I know the premise is dumb, but that's the point, and it's wonderful. So that is number 2, Shirtless Bear Fighter. All right, so that brings us to the coveted number 1 pick of the Slapshot Toys top 10 comics of 2017. And number 1 comes from Image Comics, the writer, Donny Cates, God Country. Now, God Country kind of takes place in a rural town in Texas. We have a son and his family that is actually trying to take care of his dying father, who is dying from Alzheimer's. And the family is just absolutely struggling to take care of this old man. And then all of a sudden, this gigantic storm, this tornado, comes, rips the house apart, rips through this whole town. And then all of a sudden, they find this magical sword. The father picks it up, and every one of his memories is restored. What follows are these mystical gods and creatures all trying to take back this sword as we watch a father not only fight for all his memories, but fighting to protect his family as well. And it is just a beautifully, just stunning book. I can't say anything else about it. This is a mini-series, so the entire book is in this one trade. I think it was 6 or 7 issues. But it just the themes of being a father and the lengths that you would go to protect your family, and just some of the parallels with some of these other themes that are in this book are simply amazing. This is something that I would give, like an actual kind of literary person that was like, well, there's nothing in comics other than pictures and things like that. But like, read God Country. There's a ton in this book, and it's beautiful. Like I can't describe it any other way. I also did a full review of this book a while back, so I do have a much longer, much more in-depth review on it available if you guys are interested. So check that video out. But I mean, just the themes of a family and in the lengths that we go to protect that family are just breathtaking in this book. The art and creature design is again second to none, and this book honestly just took my breath away, and it's won all sorts of awards, as it should. This is just one spectacular book that really proves that comics are so much more than just these little these little meaningless little action adventure things where people just punch each other. This is just a unbelievably, I know I keep saying that, but just a wonderfully just thought out, written, drawn. This is comics. Like this is what comics are, and is what comics should be, and that is why God Country is our number 1 pick. So that is going to do it for our top 10 comics of 2017. Like I said at the beginning, this was an unbelievable year for comics. So many amazing things came out. There was no way that I could get through everything that I thought was amazing, but I definitely tried to pick the ones that I thought were the best. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this list. I hope you had a wonderful 2017. Let me know in the comments if you guys liked any of the books I had on my top 10 list. Love to know what your top 10 list is, so go ahead and put that in the comments below. And yeah, if you guys don't mind, go ahead, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and give it a thumbs down if you didn't. Doesn't matter to me. And go ahead and subscribe so you guys don't miss on any of the future content. And also, I am part of a mod group for a comic Facebook page called the Syndicate Comics. If you're into action figures, you may have heard of the Syndicate. We're an offshoot of the Syndicate action figure group, but we are focused only on comics. So there's going to be a link in the description below that will send you to our page. It'd be awesome if you could go ahead and join our community. Love to talk comics with you. And that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys had a wonderful 2017. I know I did. Can't wait for 18. I know we're going to get some amazing comics in 2018. It's going to be even better, even harder to pick 10 next year. So that's going to do it for me. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out these videos. It really does mean a lot to me. And I'll catch you guys later. See ya.